Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? What's going on? It's your boy DJ Prosper.
It's your girl Rain.
It's your girl Charity.
And you're listening to Powerhouse Radio. And we got a special guest in the building in our Zoom cams.
That's right.
Not in the building, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Hey, who do we got, Rachel?
Listen, if you guys have not heard this name before, I don't know
Where
what
do you
y'all are
live?
missing. Where do you live? Where are you from? Listen, this
are you under?
is a drummer that goes without any mention. He has played for so many different artists, from John P. Key, Donald Lawrence, Aretha Franklin. He even did some stuff with R. Kelly. Like what? Listen, we gotta talk about it all. We gotta talk about it all.
On all that.
Listen, in the building we have none other than Mr. Calvin Rodgers. How are you doing today, Calvin?
I'm really, really good. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. I'm so eager to have any kind of in-person interaction these days. So,
Listen,
like, this is cool for me. I'm like, anytime I get to interact with humans, like multiple people at one time, I'm with it. I'm with it.
any type of
I
human.
appreciate the invite.
100%.
Hey.
All right, so let's get started. Let's jump right in. So, what made you choose drums of all instruments to get started with?
Man, I have been asked this question multiple times. Like so many times I've been asked this question. I will say that I have, for the last few years, I've been asked this question. I have answered it this way. I don't feel like I chose drums. I feel like drums chose me because, like I've never had anything else on in my sight or in my peripheral, in my vision. Nothing else has ever been, even everything that I've wanted to do has been centered around drums. And it's been that way for me since I can even remember existing. So
Yeah. And I know I heard you got started at like a young age. You grew up on the south side of Chicago. Talk to us a little bit about your upbringing.
yeah, I grew up in like for real on the south side of Chicago, and music fortunately helped me like kind of be like almost ignorant to what was going on in the world. I got in a little bit of trouble when I got a little bit older, but I was still so consumed with music the way that I was that I was able to make a decision. I saw that this was a way for me to not have to deal with some of the things that were going on in my community. It kept me out of the streets, kept me out of the hood, you know. And when I got older and started seeing like what was going on in those parts, and you know, as a young man, I think every young man goes to that phase where he's trying to decide what he wants to be cool and what people are reacting to and what's cool, what's the lick or whatever. And I went through that phase, and at one point I thought it was hanging out in the streets. And so I quickly saw like what that led to. I lost a couple of friends that were my age, you know, having the understanding, being made to understand a teenager at 14 or 15 years old, his life is snatched away from him. It really doesn't make any sense. You just can't really wrap your mind around the concept of somebody taking his life over something foolish. So I experienced some of that. And once I kind of went through that, I was just like, you know, that can't be my future. And I had a strong community around me. I met some incredible musicians, some incredible human beings who were not just dedicated to making sure I became a great musician, but they were dedicated to making sure that I became a great person, making sure that I, you know, followed through, making sure that I got out of school, making sure that I just had my head on straight. And I got really, really lucky in my teenage years. Some of the people that I came across in my life that just really just pushed me through in the right direction.
So it was kind of like a blessing in disguise, like kind of like the
music. It was not kind of like a blessing, brother. Like my story for real, like really quickly, like around 16 or 17, I'm hanging with the wrong crowd, and I get kicked out of my first high school. And my parents were getting ready to send me to like a military school, and my sister was she was trying to auditioning to get into a performing arts school here in Chicago. And so she had to audition because we lived outside of the district. Um, I went to this audition with my sister, and they were like, "Well, while your sister goes to this audition, you can wait in the band room or the gym." I went to the band room, end up jamming, having a jam session in there with some of the guys that are in there, and the teacher comes out and is like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" I tell him I'm just sitting around waiting for my sister, and he's like, "Where do you go to school at?" Well, I end up going to the school. I end up getting into the school. He actually, the teacher comes out and goes and gets my mother and says, "If you let your son come to this school, we'll make sure your daughter gets in." And
Wow.
so I end up getting into school, and I made some connections there with three very important people. A guy named Keith Harris, who is the drummer and one of the producers for Will I Am for Black Eyed Peas. Uh, a guy named Ramsey Lewis, who's an internationally world-renowned jazz musician, and a guy named Ernie Adams. During this time I was in the school, I was hanging with all of the wrong people. And I mean, these guys were completely just, they decided, the three of them just decided, we're going to make sure Calvin is not a failure. We're going to make sure he does not end up dead or in jail, you know what I'm saying? Or,
Wow.
laid out on the street or something like that. Literally, these guys pushed me like they were coming to see me. And this is not stuff they had to do. This is not stuff anybody was
Right.
paying them to do. There was no cameras, no press, no social media, no likes, no subscribers. So there was no story to be told, kind of. They're just doing this because they saw something in me and they didn't want to see me fail. And so these guys literally like pushed me to the graduations, like to my platform, like to my stage, like got me out of school, coming to talk to my teachers, making sure I'm not ditching school, making sure I'm not hanging out with the wrong people. Just so I was super, super fortunate and blessed that that thing happened the way it did for me, because I know so many young men who were lost, who I so many friends who are in jail, so many friends that ended up dead, so many guys that, ride around in wheelchairs now, and that easily could have been me. So, and I escaped all of that. And all that was extremely common coming from the South Side of Chicago. Well, it's almost uncommon for you to make it out of the hood now, you know what I'm saying? Like, and to be able to say you're doing something with your life or with yourself, having some kind of career.
So it's not like only being a musician chose you, but it also saved you. Right?
It saved me, absolutely.
Kind of
Yes,
like
sir.
people picking
Yeah,
up a
yeah,
basketball in
indeed.
the hood, it
Right.
saved them, or being a rapper or anything, it saved them. Being a musician for you was like an outlet in order to make sure that you get into a right path, right? So how
Yeah,
did you?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so how did you walk us a little bit through the process of becoming a professional musician now? Now, you're in it, blah blah. Did you start in church or
Oh yeah, that first opportunity, that first time, we were doing some research into you before, and you had your first opportunity, from what we could see, with Ricky Dillard and New G. How did that come about? So you're going through
Yeah.
the training. How did that opportunity come through?
So my father was a well-known musician and songwriter here in Chicago. Ricky Dillard actually started out singing with a group here in Chicago, the Thompson Community Singers, Reverend Milton Brunson, Thompson Community Singers. They were a very
That's
popular
history.
choir
Yeah.
back in the 80s. They just recently released the album maybe about 3 years ago, or like a reunion record, but they've had some really, really big songs. Ricky Dillard was a member of that choir. And the guy that was the front man for the Thompson Community Singers also had a group. His name was Tyrone Block, and he had a group called Love, Salvation, and Devotion. And my dad played with them. And so growing up, I was basically my dad's personal drummer. I traveled with him wherever he went. I was there. So if it was a rehearsal, if it was a concert, it was a church service, it was a wedding band gig, anything.
Whatever.
It was just that I was playing with him. And so I knew not only Ricky, but I knew his music director, a guy named Walter Hardy, who was his guitar player at the time. And so um, at one point, I wasn't doing anything. I was very young. I was about 14 years old. Um, I was just kind of playing in church, and I ran into Ricky's music director, and he asked, like, "Man, what are you doing right now?" And I'm like, "I'm not doing much, man. I play at church with my dad." And he was like, "Man, I'm looking to bring in some young blood for Ricky. You know, I'm bringing in a couple of younger guys. I'm getting ready to swap out some guys. You know, and we going in another direction with the band. Would you be interested? And I'm like, sure. And so the very next night, he comes and picks me up because I'm 14. I can't drive. He comes and picks me up, and I go to band rehearsal with him, and then I stay in rehearsal with the choir that night, and then the next morning, Ricky comes to my house, and he comes and talks to my parents, and he's just basically like, "Listen, this young man is 14 years old. There are a lot of things that you know there are a lot of reasons you could say no, but basically, he's like, he's got a huge talent. I think that this will be a great start for him. We will be committed to making sure that he doesn't miss school. He stays up on the schoolwork, and this doesn't interfere with that. We'll keep school as his priority, and but we want to be one of the people to platform him, to launch him into the gospel music industry and community. And so I started like traveling on the road with Ricky when I was 14.
Wow.
Yeah, that is literally crazy. So just walk us through, what are some of the things that were going through your mind at that time? You're sitting there, you're getting ready for a live recording. What are some things that you're thinking about at that point?
All of it was just like, all of it was when I was young and seeing all of these things, meeting all these musicians around the world. I was 14 years old, right when I turned 14. I think when I turned 14, not long after my 14th birthday, I got on a plane for the very first time and flew to LA to play a TV show and like a weekend of concerts with Ricky Dillard. And I was just like, and I was kind of just like kind of oblivious to what was going on. Like I was just, because I didn't really care much about it, and I wasn't really doing anything. I was playing drums, which I love to do. People were enamored by, and kind of in awe of what I was doing, I guess because I was so young, but I was never really like, I just wasn't like really, really like, I wasn't getting it. I was just like, I'm just here to play drums. That's all I really want to do. And 14 years old, you don't know anything else. And it was different then because it's not all this other stuff. It's not so much media and stuff like that. So, but that's just what I was doing. I remember the first recording that I played on with him. By the time we recorded the first album, I may have been either 15 or 16. The first album that I recorded with him, which was the Hallelujah album, and that was when I probably was like, oh, wait a minute. Cause like, we're at this humongous church and it's jam packed and there's lights and cameras and like they did it. They like for the first recording I played on, for that recording, for the Hallelujah record, I remember pulling up to the church and they had like a big spotlight out in front of the church, sitting out in front of this church, like letting everybody with a it had like a hologram or something.
Oh, kind of like the Batman sign kind of thing.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, but it was like shooting up on the church wall, like Ricky Dillard and New G.
Ricky Dillard, like
so
hologram.
I was just like, I'm like, man, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
And so, but to hear when I remember there was this long staircase that we had to come down when the recording was getting ready to start. We had to come down and we started walking down these stairs. And the minute we come out, people started screaming like craziness.
Wow.
So,
were you nervous? Did you get mad nervous at that point or no?
No, I didn't get nervous. Unfortunately, I kind of wish I would have got nervous. Instead, I got a little cocky, actually, to be honest. Like, I'm like, yo, these people here.
Let's go. Try to get lit.
That's so funny.
I wish I would have gotten nervous, but I didn't. I kind of got, I got a little cocky, and that was not my best work. And funny enough, Ricky was just talking about this over Instagram a couple of days ago, where he made a joke about a song that I played, and I was saying to him, I was like, I'm so grateful that you didn't just throw me away after that first session I played on with you,
Oh,
because I was just horrible, you know.
wow.
I was a kid. It was the first time I hadn't really. This was the first time I was like in front of people playing, and my dad wasn't there, because my dad kept a tight leash on me as a musician, because I was
Right.
always playing with him. So I was scared to do anything, but he wasn't there. He wasn't in the band, so I was just like, oh man, I'm gonna play everything I can think
Every
of, and I
lick,
did. And
every
it was
single lick.
horrible.
No rules. That's
But
so
Oh
all the people
funny.
was like, oh, well, look, he's so cute. He's 15 years old, just playing everything all over while Ricky's singing. You can't hear nothing else. That's so cute.
All right, all right, all right. We're back. We're back. We're back here. This is DJ Prosper.
It's your girl Ray.
It's your girl Charity.
And this is Powerhouse
Radio.
Radio. And we have my man.
None other than Calvin Rodgers in the building with us right now. Drummer phenomenon. Like, it's such a blessing to have you here, Calvin. How are you?
I'm great. I'm enjoying
You still with
the
us?
interaction. I'm
You still
enjoying
kicking it with us?
talking, hanging.
First
Yeah.
of all, you know, we were talking about your come up and everything, and the fact that, hey, you've only worked one job that was not music related in your life. Wow. So, how are you doing right now as a musician with this whole COVID situation, pandemic, and all that? How are you recalibrating your situation right now?
To be honest, like some years ago, a little bit over 10 years ago, I started working remotely as a studio musician. So I was renting out. At first, I was renting out studio spaces, and I was working with different artists recording mobily. So, like when I first did my very first studio session for someone, where they were like in a completely different city and state, and I was. When I first started that, man, I used to have to record. They would send me an MP3, like email it to me, and then I would put it in the computer, play the drums over, and then I would burn the drum waves to like a DVD,
Oh,
because the CD wasn't big enough. I would burn like the waves to like a DVD, and then have to FedEx or UPS it back to them like overnight, so they would get it. Now, you know, so I started doing that like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Man, it's evolved since then, but I've always kept some type of home studio recording thing happening. Now my studio is in my home. So when actually, and then a little bit over a year ago, for a little while, I took a full-time position in my church, Pastor Hannah's. So I was his senior director of creative arts. And so when the pandemic happened, I was like not really playing. And I hadn't been playing a lot. And I was really, really kind of like not happy with that. But it was a highly administrative position, and it was fun, and it was cool, and I enjoyed it. And I'm going to get back into doing some more of that. But, you know, I did what I went there to do. And then I kind of just was like, after kind of once we got settled, and I think really from a spiritual aspect, I think I was just there really to kind of help them, because I didn't know that this was coming.
Right.
But I saw that there were things that were missing there, and things that they were just like, they weren't seeing clearly. And one of the things that I was dealing with him with was like, I was telling him like, yo, man, you're not focusing enough energy on your online ministry. Like, and so we started focusing on like what the people that weren't in the building, what they were getting. So we started working on that, and then boom, a pandemic happened.
Wow.
But now we were
Timing.
already ahead of the game, because we had already started working on the audio portion of it. We'd already started working on the visual portion of it. And so, I grew that department, I grew that ministry for what I was there to do. And then when I felt released, I stepped back, and I was just like, you know, I was getting a lot of calls to like do studio stuff, and I was having a lot of people like, once they saw the world wasn't going to end in the middle of this pandemic, like people just
Jesus
started
didn't come
going
back yet.
really, really heavy with all the virtual stuff.
Right.
So everybody was calling me like, hey man, can you cut some songs for my church? And can you do a video? And can you do a clinic? And, you know, we're still putting out this record. We're working on Pastor Sapp's album, and we still getting ready to do this and do that, and then Christmas album. So I said all of that to say, like, my home studio, for one, has kept me very, very busy. But also all the other things that I had going on. So I still, from time to time, help out, ministries doing the
Right.
administrative stuff, helping them through that. So that's been one thing that I've been able to,
Okay.
keep me sustained. And then the other thing, which is really what has been the majority of what I've been doing is my studio. And
Nice.
so that's been really, really cool for me. That's really been helping me.
Now that's dope. Now, you just mentioned Marvin Sapp. You have been playing with so many artists, but I want to take it back to how I came into contact with you was with John P. Key. Listen, we can't do an interview with you and not talk about that. How did you come into contact with John P. Key?
So, I think I think it was like 1998. Well, first of all, I was a huge John P. Key fan. So anytime he came to town, I would go and see him. My dad would take me, and anytime he was there, I would go downtown to see him at the Chicago Gospel Fest. And he would come here on tour here, play the Regal Theater or play a church. And I was always there. I was a fan of his musicianship. I was a fan of his songwriting. And he gave a great show, man. Like Pastor Key still is he's one of those artists
man.
you don't necessarily want to go behind.
Yeah.
But he's a little bit more, he's a little bit more settled now. But I have still seen Pastor Key, like even right now, like decide, oh, I want to sing, and he will sing the roof off of a place.
Let's
Yes.
go.
love
Yep.
But when I was younger, seeing him in concert was just, it was unreal, man. This dude gave a show. It was like James Brown almost. It was the energy of his show, the energy, the ministry, the sound of it, the
Yes.
look,
Yeah.
everything back then, man. It was just,
He
it
put
was
the performance to
overwhelming.
it. He made it different. He made it a performance. What would you say is one of the key lessons or one of the lessons you learned at that time while working with John P. Key?
I learned so much from that man. I learned so much from him, but as a musician, he taught me, as a musician, John taught me about how to record in the studio. I remember going to him and saying, I want to be a studio musician. I don't know how to work in the studio. And he was just like, I'm going to make you a studio musician. So he taught me how to play to a click track. At the time, he still owned a tape machine. So he was teaching me how to set up tape for recording. He's teaching me how to program. He's teaching me how to mic drums, all tools that I use today. I didn't hire anyone to put my home studio together, to wire it, to nothing. I used all of this stuff that I learned from Pastor Key, good drum tones,
Wow.
playing with drum machines, playing with drum loops, how to support an artist, so it was so much musically. And then spiritually, the stuff that Pastor Key he really taught me about living in faith. Because everything that dude did, he did basically. Walk by Faith is a song, but it's literally like how that dude lives his life out that way. John will pack a bus full of instruments, full of singers, and John would basically he would say, "Okay, I've got 5 dates that that I know that we're gonna play, but we're gonna stay out for a month, and we're gonna pick the rest of these dates up." And if it meant, oh, well, we played one date and then a pastor was like, well, hey, you could go to my friend's church down the road or
Wow.
or a state up or in another region.
Okay.
Or if it meant playing at somebody's church and just saying, we just coming. We're not asking for no money. It's not about the bread. But I literally I just saw him live life that way.
Wow.
The man went and picked out his house. He's like, man, I don't know anything about buying this house or it's out of my tax bracket or whatever. He told this testimony for years. And I was playing him about how he just went in the open house and they was telling him he couldn't buy the house. And he was just in there laying hands on it.
Let's go.
Wow.
He said, he was like, he used to tell a story about how he was going to the house every time they had to open the house and he was just oil spots all over the house randomly because he was just like
The blood.
he was claiming it,
I claim it.
But I just saw him. I saw him do that. I was made to understand by listening to him teach and preach and seeing him live that I did not have to let a person or a thing control me or my destiny. And so I had one time I had an artist that didn't really care for my disposition one time when I was younger start telling me that because you think that because you're chasing being a musician for a living, and that's what you're going to do, and this is what you're saying you're going to do, you're going to end up prostituting yourself and your gift for the rest of your life. And he said, you're never going to own a home. You're never going to have credit. You're just going to end up being basically a whore, like selling yourself and your gift to people. And I told John how that bothered me one night because I was with him. I told him what had happened, and he basically was like, man, you can never let that happen to you if you do not chase money. Like, if you don't chase money, if you trust God, you pay your tithes, if you're faithful to him, and you move faithfully, then you don't have to worry about that happening, you know. And that's what I did. You know, I made sure that I was never motivated by like money or anything like that for a gig. I always did it because I loved it, you know. So I was with Pastor Key. I toured with him until about 2000 and maybe about 2001. Okay. And so simultaneously I was touring with Pastor Key and with R. Kelly. And then they kind of like ran into each other, and then R. Kelly went on a world tour, and so I had to, you know, and
let's jump in on that. Let's talk about that.
That's a perfect segue.
It's the perfect segue. So you're caught, and you're now offered opportunities in the secular realm. What was the driving force behind you wanting to go and starting to play secular?
Initially, it was like, you know, I was just thinking about what I wanted, how I wanted my career to go, you know. And I was looking at a lot of the people that I was influenced by. Gerald Hayward is the one person. Gerald Hayward started out with Pastor Hezekiah Walker and playing with Timothy Wright, but he's done Beyonce, he's done Michael Jackson, he's done Blackstreet, Teddy Riley, Destiny Child. He's played with everyone. And so he was one of my huge influences. Teddy Campbell was another one of my huge influences. He's from Chicago, and I watched him start off playing with choirs and groups here, and then he went on to play with, like, he started out with a group with LSG with Gerald Levert, and then he went from there to Frankie Beverly, and then he went to 98 Degrees and Backstreet Boys, and then Britney Spears and things like that. So I'm just at first I'm looking at their path, and I'm going, okay, if I want to do the things they're doing, this falls right in line with the career. This falls right in line with the path I'm headed down. So, I was working in some studios, playing drums on like TV and radio commercials, and I literally like bump into R. Kelly while I'm sound checking my drums, and he comes in the room, listens to me play, sends his music director over there, and I land this gig. And so, I did that for about 2 years, and I worked with him and in the studio, and I worked with him touring.
Right.
So
which R. Kelly song that could you say like, oh, I played on that, like one that we would know?
No, because he did not use any live drums in the studio.
Right.
So in the studio, what I did with them was he was very specific about sound design and like drum sounds. He hated the inconsistencies of a live drum, and unfortunately he never like gave me a chance at playing drums in the studio, but he was very, very meticulous about drum tones. So I would help his engineers. I would like sound design with his engineers for like the specific drum sounds and things like that. So that was my studio side of him. I only toured with him live on drums. Yeah.
Okay. So you're at this point, you're playing with R. Kelly. Was there ever a point where, and this is going to sound kind of cliched, that you ever felt conflicted at all, playing secular, playing in the church? Did you ever feel conflicted? I think a lot of times in the church, there's a stigma that musicians can't do both, or you feel a certain way. Did you ever feel like that?
I didn't feel like that because of the music. I never felt like that because of the music. If I'm being honest, I mean, I won't say R. Kelly per se, but I'll say that I've been around some secular artists who maintain a tighter camp from a spiritual aspect than some gospel artists I've worked with. 100%. So, you know, I was never conflicted by the music. I would be conflicted and be convicted by some of the things I was partaking in at times, but never by the music because I always knew who I was.
Right.
And even when I was doing stuff I had no business doing, I always knew who I was. So, um, I never got into that whole thing where playing a certain style of music, um, made me, pulled me away from Christ because any music I play always is a form of worship for me. Like I don't, anytime I play drums, it's an extension of my worship. So it doesn't really matter it doesn't matter if I'm at a bar mitzvah. It doesn't matter if I'm at a wedding. It doesn't matter if I'm in a club. It doesn't matter to me, like it's just an extension of my form of worship. So I never really battled with that from a musical standpoint.
Okay, so that's good. That's good. So now in the process of, because that's pretty much the path of pretty much musicians, right?
Yeah.
They see that they're in the church, they do this, they want to go for it in the professional level, and they see that usually the musicians get called to do secular music as well and whatnot. But we do hear behind the scene that there's not much of a difference between being on the road for gospel artists or being on the road for secular artists, right? And like the behind the scene aspect of it is what the stigma and the what the people are always arguing about when it comes to musicians being secular and
Working in the church.
working in the church. So what's your take on that? Like, do you agree with it, or what is it?
I think that it's I think this is every person needs to deal with where they are, and they have to be honest about where they are in life and who they are and what they can handle, and then from there can make a decision. Because I've seen church musicians go on the road and ruin themselves. They are not. I have seen it. I've seen church musicians go on the road and they lose their anointing. And it's not taken from them, but because they're not operating in that space and that they're not releasing that sound that God like put in them, they lose it. Not only that, they lose who they are. You know, and so I've seen that happen. I've also seen, you know, I've seen altar calls at secular concerts. I've seen people, someone be led to Christ at a bar, or at a mall, so the circumstances surrounding where ministry happens, that doesn't really, I think that's something that Christians are caught up in.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we, are caught up in where ministry takes place. And we're the ones saying it can only take place here. It can only be done here. And, my dad was raised that way. And when I was coming up, he missed out on a lot of opportunities because the church he grew up in was just like, no, we don't do that. You're going to stay in church and dedicate your life to Christ, and you're going to come here and play the guitar while we shout and scream and slob and spit and run all over the place. And then you're going to go home and you're going to work at a steel mill or you're going to work at an auto factory or something like that. When it's like, but I have an enormous gift that maybe possibly would be able to take care of me and my family and my children and my children's children for years and years and years to come.
Right. So how do you think the church can do a better job of nurturing and uplifting those who have these gifts instead of keeping them within the four walls, if you will?
Well, what I think the church, for one, has to be very, very honest about change. Because I'm seeing that change is taking place and the church is holding on to the old time way, and we have to be honest about change. As much as I hate it, when I was growing up, there was no question about what you were doing on Sunday. You getting up and you're going to church. That's it. You're going to wear decent clothes that are going to be ironed. You're going to shower. You're going to comb your hair. You're going to smell like something. You're going to look like something. It's a different day and age now. And so the first thing we have to do is we got to be honest and we got to tell the truth. Like, things are changing, and there's so many other options out here for musicians. So if you want them in the church, I'm not saying I'm not saying that you got to go and wave a dollar in front of a musician, but you have to find some kind of way to motivate them to want to give and give and give and give, you know? And a lot of musicians now are starting to feel like everybody's going, oh, the pastor doesn't care about me. You know, the pastor don't, all he wants is me to come and just play and make everybody dance and sing and shout, you know? And so, and more young people are finding ways for them to be platformed without the church. You know, church was the way people knew me when I was growing up.
Right.
If you wanted to hear me,
You had to
it's
come to
like, man,
church.
he play over
Come
at this
check me
church.
out. Yep.
Right.
Now you be like, yo, I want to hear little JoJo.
Yep.
Here
Follow
go his Instagram page.
Yep.
You know
Yep.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And JoJo is 11 years old and he
Killing.
got 250,000 followers.
Killing
You
it.
know what I'm saying?
It's true.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we gotta be honest about where we are. We have to be honest. We gotta know that we can't hold on to this old time way and think we're gonna shove this down their throats and they're gonna accept it. We got to be honest about where we are and where times are, and then we need to meet them where they are. One of the things I was telling my pastor at New Life is I said, well, we got to start looking at what's happening in the world now. We were in church, and I mean, I hate to say this, but the pastor was one of the pastors was preaching, and I'm saying this guy was just intent. He was dead intent on preaching this sermon the way he wrote it out and everything, and he's not getting any responses, and he's running long. And I'm like, man, people's attention span are not that long now. Like people need to be thinking, how can I get people's attention quick? Get to my bullet points so that they'll remember it, and then go ahead and invite them to Christ.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Because the days of people listening to 45-minute long sermons, everything else around the world is changing except for the gospel industry and the church.
Absolutely.
Instagram used to let you put up 15, your videos could only be 15 seconds, right?
Yeah. Didn't it start as
Check
10?
this out. They allowed you to put, when they first introduced videos, your videos could be 15 seconds. Then they went to a minute long. But then when the videos went to a minute, what did they do? They shortened the preview. So they took the previews down to 10 seconds.
Yep.
So now you don't even watch the 15 seconds that you had in the first place.
It's true.
They give you 10 seconds to decide whether or not you're interested in what you're looking at.
Absolutely.
That's how
good.
quick we need to be with getting these people's attention with the word of God. We got to meet them where they are, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, you know. And then we have to engage them, and we have to we got to find a way to engage them and meet them where they are, and then offer Christ to them, because in the end, that's what is going to really. That's the only thing that's going to keep them and sustain them.
Absolutely.
You know? And unfortunately, the praying mother and somebody condemning them and preaching to them, and they're not hearing that now. So you got to find a way to do that. We got to do that.
And that's exactly what we're doing right now this month. The platform that we're holding down here in Powerhouse Radio.
Right.
It's Musician
Appreciation Month. I was ready for it. I was ready.
He's been messing that up all
month.
But you're here and you got it right. So
And that's the
praise
whole
God.
purpose, in order for us to create a platform to empower them and to show them that we appreciate them, that we love on them. And absolutely what I'm hearing from you is to pretty much have some kind of like a musician church boot camp in order to form them and prepare them and groom them, because regardless, they're going out there.
Right.
So we need to.
They're going out there, but you know what? It's not a boot. It's pastor them.
Yeah.
Pastor them.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all you got to do.
Right.
That's all you have to do. Pastor them. If a member
And
comes
care
to
on
you
them.
and he's got an issue, if he's battling alcoholism, you know what I'm saying? You got to pastor him.
Hey.
And you can't just. You're not going to win no battle with no addiction with somebody going, thus and so said the Lord.
Absolutely.
This is what the Bible say. Crack the Bible. I'm going to crack that Bible open, and that bottle going to stare at me in my face until I go get it. So I need you to pastor me, encourage me, shepherd me, walk me through this
Hold me
thing.
accountable.
And whatever that means for musicians, however you do that for a musician, then do that. Pastor, make sure, but the first way you do it, the first thing you do is by showing that you care about more than his gift.
Absolutely.
Show that you're concerned about more than his gift. And that's why we're losing so many musicians. That's the reason why the church is losing so many musicians, because they're being made to see now, they're seeing more than ever now, that a lot of times they've been made to feel like Nothing matters but my gift. That's it. Nobody cares about anything besides that. You see me coming in here, I don't look happy. You just all you want to know is, are you going to be able to play today?
Hey,
I'm not
let's
feeling
go.
good.
We
Well,
had
are
this
you
whole
going to be able to play
conversation.
today?
You're in the
Me and
bag
my girl
now.
going through it. Well, are you going to be able to play today? Because you're getting paid, and it's like,
Right. So you're
If
here to
it's
do a
not you, it's
job. So
somebody
what's
else.
going on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
You're in the bag. You're in the
yeah. So
bag.
you got to pastor them. You have to pastor them.
100%, man. That's mad deep. I feel like we need to take a break right here. Let's just take a quick break right here. Give us a song you want us to play right now. Which one do you want us to drop right now? If you could introduce it.
Yeah, I'll say, I'll say that this is one of my favorite songs and this is an album I played on that not a lot of people talk about, but um, I don't really remember the title of this album, but it's a song by William Murphy called "God Chaser,"
God Chaser.
and I really love this song. I love this entire album.
All right.
He's got a bunch of great songs in there. "Leaning in My Direction" is on that album, but I love this song "God Chaser." So William Murphy, "God Chaser."
All
That'd be
right.
cool.
There it is on Powerhouse Radio. Let's go.
Ooh, sir, you in the bag. You in the bag. You in the bag.
All right, all right, all right. We're back. We are back. We are back. It's your boy DJ Prosper.
It's your girl, Ray.
It's your girl Charity.
And who we got, Shahite? Who do we have?
The
in
one
the
and only,
building?
the legend, the myth, the only Calvin Rodgers, all the way from Chicago, Illinois.
Yes.
So happy that you're here.
So hold up. You're from Chicago, right? And Charity here is telling me that you're like a Laker fan to the point that
Man.
she had to be like, "Yo, we need to get like a Laker jersey around
listen,
here."
Yeah, I wore it, but I texted all of them. I'm like, we're wearing Lakers gear next week. But no one listened.
Bro, I don't get it,
but-
man. I don't get it, man. He's Chicago Bulls, man. He's Michael
Man,
Jordan. Michael Jordan era on top of that.
I grew up. I was young when Mike was playing. I was in elementary school, and I remember them winning the chips, whatever.
right.
But when I was getting into sports, when I was like kind of heavy into sports, it was the transition between MJ. MJ was leaving our league. We had MJ from the Wizards. Like,
Yeah.
that ain't the real MJ. But that was the
Come
beginning
on now.
of that
You
was the
put up
beginning of
50
the
points at
Kobe
the age
era.
of 40. Come on now.
So Kobe and Shaq was like they was coming on,
Yeah.
and I remember seeing Kobe, Bryant. I remember him taking like Brandy on prom, and I'm like, dang, okay. And I didn't know who he was, and then they were saying he was like he was about to be like going into the NBA straight from high school, and so
Yeah.
I began watching him play. That was my introduction to him. Like I saw I saw in a magazine that he took like Brandy on prom or something, and then I was like, "Who is this?" And it was like, "Oh yeah, he
Were you jealous?
can graduate from."
Yeah, you said it twice now.
Brandy, like, I was
twice.
concerned. I had to
You
look
got
into
that.
it.
No, I was just trying
Who's
to
this
figure out
guy?
like
Who's this
why
white
they talking about him and not Brandy. They would like the story was about him, and I was just like, okay. So I started following his game, and I kind of fell in love with his game, and then I really liked his attitude. He was young, he was cocky. You know what I'm saying? But
Big
I
time.
see
back it
myself
up.
in you.
You know.
Big time. He did, though.
Relatable.
But then the more and more I started to learn about him, I started studying, his discipline, how much he studied the game, how much of a student of the game he was. I became an admirer of all of that. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Laker Nation.
yeah, Laker Nation.
Okay, so first take is over. back to the music.
Yeah, now let's talk your style. Now you have been able to kind of reinvent the way that we look at drums, the way we hear drums. What went into you kind of really establishing that as you were working with different artists as you grew in your career?
Just looking at, deciding when I left, when I finished touring with R. Kelly, everybody was telling me like, okay, go now. This is when you move to LA. So go to LA now, and look for try to find you another R&B gig,
Right.
another tour to get on. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. I played with R. Kelly. It was I learned a lot, but I hated it. It was boring for me. It was completely boring. And so I learned a lot while I was there, but I was just like, I don't want to really. I'm like, I didn't enjoy playing R&B. So why am I going to go to LA and look for another R&B gig? And I'm not really digging this. So Um, so I just decided, I'm like, I'm just focused on like recording. I'm just start focusing on playing on records. I really wanted to play on records bad anyway. I've never really had my sights on really like touring. I just always wanted to play on records because I fell in love with music and drums by listening to records.
Right.
And I fell in love with a drummer and his style who was thousands of miles away from me and had no idea who I was, but I was studying him every day. So I was just like, I want to do that for somebody. I want somebody to pick up a record, not be able to touch me, not be able to see me, not have any idea where I am or how to get to me, but be able to put this record on and be inspired by me. So I knew I wanted to do that at a very young age. So from there, I just really just started building this puzzle of all the musicians and drummers that I was either a fan of or I idolized or I admired, and so and they were from all over. So it was musicians, there was jazz influences. One of my biggest influences in jazz is two guys, Will Kennedy from the Yellow Jackets, Dave Weckl, who played with Chick Corea. Those are two very, very like strong influences in my life. Then you had Teddy Campbell, who was here in Chicago for so long, who I admired, spent a lot of time with. And you had, guys like Gerald Hayward, who I talked about earlier. Then you had Joel Smith, who played with the Hawkins. And then you had Ricky Lawson, who was Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston's drummer. So all of these, and then Terry Baker, I can't leave him out. Terry Baker, who was playing a lot of gospel recordings. He plays with Kirk Franklin now, but he was playing a lot of recordings, and he was working for one of the producers who I just really admired. His name is Sanchez Harley, and he produced the Kirk Franklin Rebirth album. So I was studying them, and then I just started studying different, so I was like, put all of those drummers in a pot, and then put the producers that I liked. Quincy Jones, I was studying Quincy Jones a lot because he was Quincy, and everybody's like, yo, you want to be a producer, you gotta start from the top. You gotta deal with Quincy,
Absolutely.
So I'm dealing with Quincy. I'm looking at Quincy. Then I'm looking at all the Motown stuff, Berry Gordy. I'm looking at that stuff and I'm analyzing that, putting parts together. And then there was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. So I'm looking at them and I'm like I'm taking all of this stuff in. So I'm consuming my ears and my mind with all of this stuff. So all the drummers I mentioned, producers that I mentioned, and then the artistry of people, like, the personalities of these people, and seeing how sidemen were able to maintain great, gigs, but they were also kind of like frontmen as well. You know what I'm saying? So people came to see them. So it's like people came to see a sideman as a frontman playing with somebody else. So I'm studying all these things. I'm looking at all of this stuff and just trying to pick up, like, where do I fit into that, and just trying to put all of that together. And that's pretty much what I did, just beginning to understand how to make music for a producer and for a musician, because I want to play so that my peers, are like, man, this dude sounds really good. But I also want to play some producers and artists. I like, get that guy, And so I had great training ground, of course, with Ricky, and then going from Ricky to Pastor Key to R. Kelly, and then to Donald Lawrence. Because when I decided not to go to LA, after touring with R. Kelly, Donald had just moved to Chicago, and I was playing with Ricky Dillard, and I think I was also playing with like Mark Hubbard, who's another choir master here in Chicago. He had a choir, and Donald heard me playing with him and was just like, okay, I'm gonna be here for a little while. Like, I'm putting some session musicians together, and I started working heavily a lot with him. And he started teaching me a lot. Donald was like letting me sit in on like studio sessions with him, so I would play sessions with him, and then I would hang back and watch him work the vocal sessions, and and I was paying attention to every little detail that he was involved in. His ears are just so huge, like he hears every single thing, and he pays attention to every single detail. So I'm picking all of that up, and and then of course I have to say Bashawn Mitchell, because we were at Bishop Trotter's church together at the time too as well. So I'm watching Bashawn who what I with Bashan, I was looking at him, and he was like, he was just really, really good at like grabbing artists and seeing what they wanted and then bringing them what they wanted. Like he just made them. He just knew what to do with them. He knew what needed to be done
Right.
with them. He knew what kind of songs to write for this artist, what kind of songs to write for that. So I learned that from him. I just watched him doing that. So it was just all of those things, really.
Nice. Is it fair to say that you're more now into songwriting and producing as opposed to
Musical directing.
I'm still very much into drums, and especially because of the pandemic, I've gained a completely new love for my instrument. I practice like every day.
okay?
Something I did not have a chance to do a lot, and had previously. Just I don't even necessarily know if I could find motivation to do it, but I've completely fallen in love with my instrument all over again.
Okay.
Just having this time to like be at home and take time with it, and
Connect.
being inspired and motivated to just like, man, I still feel like I can play, and I still feel like I want to enjoy playing, and I'll do it as much as I can. So, yeah. But I'm very passionate about songwriting. Very passionate. I'm passionate about the gospel industry. I feel like, I was saying earlier, like we're not paying attention to all of the changes that are taking places. We're seeing all of the ways technology is moving forward and things like that, but we ain't moving.
Right.
We still
Right.
trying to sell LPs and CDs.
I was just going to
It's
say
like,
that. You're still trying to do CDs for $20 a pop at the show.
no,
You know what I'm
nobody's
saying?
and you holding
CDs.
albums for, talking about, yeah, my single will be out in 60 days.
Yeah, yeah,
Boy,
yeah.
if you don't go sit down, ain't nobody gonna remember that in 60 days.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yeah, go sit down. You better put that thing when you come to talk about it. You gotta just like here, go right here.
Right there.
right.
That's what
Yeah.
you got to do.
Wow.
That's what you have to
Yeah.
do.
So with that say, what would be that? Like, what's the reason why we're missing
Yeah.
the boat right now? We're not in the bandwagon of knowing, like, because the music industry right now in the secular world is like moving so rapidly, right? Prior to that, before it
Yeah.
used to be like every 5 years, there used to be a way to do things. Now, every 2
Yeah.
days, there's no rules in the music industry.
It's something new,
right?
It's something new. You don't. I don't know who's out this week because
Right.
it's somebody
Right.
different than last week. Last week somebody was whispering on a rap song. This week they hollering on it.
Absolutely.
Next week I don't know what they gonna whistle on it. It's like it's changing, and I think since like I'm really surprised because I feel like this is the longest any sound has stayed around in like R&B music. Like trap has stayed around a long time.
Yes.
It's been around a while. It's been around longer than any other sound we've had for a while right
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? But I mean, gospel, we hang on to everything for so long. Like we don't. It's like, man, and it hurts us.
Do you think maybe because the demographic is kind of set, like people who listen to gospel music and buy gospel music are going to continue to do so? You know what I mean? So it's like, why change if the demand isn't necessarily saying you need to?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's a reason why we're having this problem. But I think it's hurting us. It's complete foolishness.
Yeah.
It's an arrogance that's just ridiculous. And you have to think about it. Those people that we're targeting and we're saying, oh, they're always going to buy. We're thinking about the mothers and the mothers of the church and the fathers of the church. But that generation is we're almost completely out of that generation.
Right.
So nobody's looking. Nobody like that generation where you could go sell CDs to,
Yeah.
and make money from it. That generation is almost extinct.
Almost.
Right.
Yep.
It's almost completely
Yep.
extinct.
Yeah.
You have to now. Nobody wants a CD. How do they don't even sell CD players in cars no
Come
more?
on, man.
It's true. It's true.
They really don't, like.
And
They almost don't.
our industry still holds on to it.
Yes.
They still
They
try.
holding on to, think about how long we hold on to singles.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was driving. One of the last weeks I was before the pandemic. I was driving to church, and I was coming from the airport, and so I didn't go to the first. My church had 4 services at the time. First service at 7:30, so maybe I missed the first 2 services. So I'm in my car around 10 a.m. and they're playing gospel music. Now in the gospel music, they playing gospel music on this HC radio because we don't have a 24-hour station. So they playing gospel music from 10 to 12, and I'm going from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, or 10 to 11, or maybe 9 to 11, and I'm going. all the people that listen to this music, for one, they at church already. So why are y'all playing this music now? For two, I was driving and they were playing Speak Lord, Speak to Me from the Color Purple soundtrack. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Of
Right.
all the
Y'all
choices.
cannot y'all seriously play. So think about so I'm like, so you got people they and then so they gotta play Speak Lord, Speak to Me. My soul has been anchored. You know what I'm saying? We gotta get that in there. Then you gotta get
God.
I Never Would Have Made It in there,
Yeah.
and
Of
James
course.
Fortune, single that now he's released 3 other albums. Sap
Bumps.
has released 3 other albums, but
Yup.
we still playing the
Yup.
album,
The
the,
old
the, the
stuff.
single
Yeah.
from this many
Yeah.
albums ago.
Yeah.
We're not giving them, the record company, the artists, a chance to grow, to progress. When you think about that, we don't do that. They don't do that in R&B radio and AC.
Nope.
They don't do that.
Nope. They don't.
If you think you could turn on mainstream AC radio and hear Beyonce "Crazy in Love" at any point during the day,
Yeah.
you're gonna be like, "What are they
It's
doing?"
a throwback.
Absolutely.
I feel that 100%. So let's talk. Where are you now in terms of the music that you're creating and what you're working on? Do you have any artists that you're planning on releasing some
Any
music
movies
with?
or anything?
Anything
going
like
on?
that? Movies.
Any films?
So yeah, I'm working on a couple of things. I'm working on quite a few things. So I'm trying to finish up this album I produced um, for my pastor Bishop Larry Trotter, which is one of the pastors that gave me my start.
Okay.
Um, I started working with him last year on a new project, and so we're trying to finish that up and get that project out. We have the luxury right now of not having a deadline, but we are looking anxiously to start getting that out. Um, I'm working with a few artists. Some artists that I've been working with. I'm working with Pastor Jenkins on some stuff right now. I just
Sweet.
played some stuff for him that he's getting ready to work on, and I got some. I'm also working on 2 projects for myself.
Okay.
One is an instrumental album that I have been
Nice.
saying I was going to put out for years, and
amazing.
I kind of got started on it in 2012, and the hard drive got stolen. So I was
Oh.
just like, and I was
That's
about
devastating.
maybe 40-50% like into that record, and
Mm.
so starting all the way over from the
Oh.
beginning just
I'm so
was
sorry.
the thought of it had
Mm.
been discouraging for a long time. So,
That's horrible.
but I'm back to working on that, and then I'm also working on this like somewhat of a legacy project for my father, who I lost in 2014. So, just some songs that he wrote that kind of he never did anything with, some songs that we wrote together,
That's beautiful.
and some of that stuff. And so I'm just trying to conceptualize in my mind, how I'm going to put all of that together and what I want to do with it. So,
Congratulations.
That's a really big deal. Thank you so much. This has been such a powerful interview.
So before we go, where can we find you on social media for the people here in Canada that never
Yes.
heard of you and they're like inspired right now? After this interview, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
The Canadians are going to be like, yo.
yeah,
Oh, they know him. Come on.
Instagram is probably the platform that I'm engaged in the most. I engage on there the most. And my handle is Calvin R _Rodgers, and Rodgers is with a D. So Calvin, CALVIN R _RODGERS. So and then I'm the same on Twitter, same handle on Twitter, and then Facebook it's like C Rod Drums. I have a fan page there on Facebook. So it's
Nice.
C Rod Drums. Yeah.
Dope,
is.
dope. But seriously, man, thank you so much for
Thank you
spending
so
some time
much.
with us today, talking to us about your experience, your journey, what you're doing now, how you've poured into so many artists. We truly, truly appreciate it. And we're definitely going to have you back on Powerhouse Family. We hope that you've had such a great time. And we're going to get back to the music. Actually, Calvin, give us one song to take us out.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to say this song was a song that was a favorite for a lot of my drum peers. And it's also a song that kind of started this whole thing between me and a fantastic songwriter and artist, James Fortune. We've been known now to work together quite a bit. He's given me a huge platform, and I always tell him I owe him a steak dinner or something. He took my stock way up. But it's a song that I had a lot of fun on, and that he allowed me to record with him. And it's called Never Again.
Yes.
All right, Powerhouse fam. It's Never Again by James Fortune on Powerhouse
And Calvin
Radio.
Rodgers.
Yes, and Calvin Rodgers.
Let's go.
Hi, Calvin Rodgers.